may have brought his chains with him today. We'll talk to him in a while. But first, it's Tony Gachoka, the man who shocks everyone wherever he goes. He's my first lineup on the guest tonight, because it's time to ask the hard questions. It is time for Jeff Koinange Live. First guest, we want to show you a little piece, a little tease of what's going to be happening tomorrow in the Inside Story. You know the one, our two famous colleagues, Moha and John Allen, talking about the Westgate attack. There's some incredible footage that they've just recovered. Here's a tease right now from John Allen Namo.
The difference between life and death for tens of people at the Westgate shopping mall was literally minutes. Hours of footage procured by KTN shows the siege as it began to unfold at exactly 12:31 p.m. on the 21st of September. And the carnage that came after is difficult to fathom. People scramble and crawl on their bellies as gunshots fly over their heads. Some almost make it to safety, but the hail of gunfire puts paid to their desperate tries. The first pair of four terrorists, Abu Baral al-Sudani and Omar Naban, casually make their way into the mall 5 minutes later, killing tens on their way. Khatab al-Kene and Umair al-Mogadish will meanwhile go up the ramp to the parking, where they will mercilessly kill tens more. But even in this carnage, there were rare moments of mercy. Like here, where al-Kene escorts a woman with 2 children, pushing a third injured child out of the mall in a shopping cart. Behind them is a badly hurt child. The trio will later make international news as some of the few who were released by the terrorists, affirming reports that it was not a hostage situation that the terrorists would engage themselves in.
I went to talk to the gunman and I said the Shahada, and he asked if I was a Muslim. I said I am, and I'd pulled Seema with me, and he asked is she a Muslim as well, and no, he said, is this your woman? I said yes, she is. And he said, ask her to cover up, and then he pointed the gun and said, leave.
But rather a brutal mission to call the world's attention to the war in Somalia by killing tens of Kenyans and citizens from across the world. The footage of the terrorists in a backroom storage area further confirming this, and the possibility that a command and control wrangle between the GSU's wreckage squad and troops from the Kenya Defense Forces may have allowed the terrorists to slip out from under the thumb of an operation that almost got them. But still, there are questions over where the terrorists are, why the combined strength of the police, the GSU and the military was unable to tame 4 terrorists armed with AK-47s and grenades, as well as the elephants in the room. Are the terrorists alive or dead? The location of close to 20 people that the Red Cross says are still missing, and whether the military looted. Tomorrow night, KTN's investigative desk will seek to answer these and more questions, with telling revelations on how the siege unfolded. Jicho Pevu with KTN's investigative editor Mohammed Ali will air tomorrow and on Sunday at 7 p.m, while the Inside Story will air tomorrow and Sunday at 9 p.m. John Allen Namo, KTN.
Don't forget to catch the rest of John Allen Namo's exclusive story on the Inside Story. That's tomorrow night at 9, and of course earlier on Jicho Pevu with my man Moha Muhammad Ali tomorrow 7 For JKL, 9 p.m. for the Inside Story. Now, let's get straight to the talk. He's been underground somewhere, hiding under a rock for the last 6 months. He's finally crawled out. He's here, guns blazing, ready to chat, ready to talk, ready to call it like he sees it. TG, we call him, otherwise known as Tony Gachoka.
Hey Jeff, how are you?
Shocker from Gachoka.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Tony.
How you doing, Jeff?
How you doing?
Very well.
Where have you been?
I've been underground. Yeah, because you know when I had you left town,
yeah,
there was someone good enough to talk to. Only Jeff you to come to see.
My man.
How are you, my brother?
Flattery will get you nowhere, man.
So, tell me now.
Are you ready?
I'm ready for you.
Okay, so the by-elections, all but have been called. I mean, it looks like a sweep for Cord. Siaya, Rasanga, huge lead, 62% or something like that, to a duel.
Well, first of all the by-elections that have been called by the courts and petitions have been lost by court. So something was wrong in court areas. Let's start there. Secondly, some of the candidates who are independent did very well. Oduor did very well, and so did the NAC candidate in Matungulu.
Matungulu.
Yes.
So it seems, I mean, Tony, 2 for 1. Court is coming back. I mean, in Parliament, before you know it, they'll have some numbers.
I think that if Uhuru Kenyatta had a by-election in Kiambu and his opponent got 42,000, I'd be very worried. So if Oduor gets 42,000 in Siaya, Raila should be very worried. I think you're misreading it.
You think I'm misreading it?
Of course you are.
But I still think when Raila speaks, the people listen.
Well, 42,000 have objected to him again, despite the fact that there was a problem and a shambles in Siaya. You know what brought up the Siaya by-election was because people thought he forced his hand. He tried to force a Buru, and that was rejected. And I think that's the problem there.
Yeah.
Kibwezi
West, Kalembe Ndile still always trying to come back, Tony, but now he lost. I mean, and the margin he looks like he's losing by.
Yeah.
That's painful.
And you know that was campaigned for by the court principals, and Kalembe was backed by court, and he has lost the election. That doesn't mean a strong court. That's a weak court.
And lost to an independent.
And to an independent candidate. And as I said, in the other by-election, NAC also did very well. So court is got reason to worry.
Tony, okay, let's switch gears for now. And you know, you were big on Jubilee from day one, Tony. They've been in office about 6 months. And some critics are describing them as, you know, it's a kickstart. I mean, it's a start-stop, if you will. They've had a very, very tough start to their campaign. Are we being too judgmental? Are we being quick to judge?
When presidents get into office, there's always a problem. If you remember Mwai Kibaki, he had Alfred Gitonga, was his private personal assistant. He was out within 6 months. There was John Githongo and the Dabako there. If you remember, there was Murungaru. He used to tell me I fly like an eagle. There was Matere Kireri and so on. Stanley Murage. They all got out. So Uhuru Kenyatta's government is on its teething problems. Of course, there are some problems because some things have not been dealt with. I'm very unhappy that nobody is dealing with the Mao forest. I'm very unhappy that nobody is dealing with the environment very strongly. And therefore, the president must act and crack his whip. And he should do so immediately.
And you know, he needs to know that it's not personal, right? Yeah. He needs to do a really good job of cracking this whip. Because, okay, let's talk about insecurity, Tony. We always knew that Al-Shabaab was going to hit us at some point. There must have been some intel. Someone dropped the ball.
Yes. Well, let me be very clear. There's no doubt that Gishangi didn't do his job well. But you know that Gishangi has got a gun on the president's head. This was the man in charge during the post-election violence. And therefore, he has a lot of data on what happened in the post-election violence. And I don't think anybody's going to touch Gishangi now until after the Hague issue is over. But I think in any other circumstance, Gishangi should actually be out of office. Because we are at war at Somalia, and therefore intelligence should have known that there would be an attack on Nairobi. Gishangi is not serving the president or the people of Kenya well at all.
At the same time, Tony, the police and KDF,
yes,
there was a huge breakdown in communication when it came to taking the mall.
Yes.
Huge breakdown. Some heads should roll.
I think, first of all, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces gave instructions to Karangi. There was a confusion as to whether that also affected the job of the Inspector General of Police. My problem is there was no command and control. There is no synergy between the security forces of Kenya, and that is very dangerous. When you are fighting a war like in Somalia, you must have a synergy with the intelligence, with the police, with the army, because they are all fighting the same war.
But at the same time, Tony, Recce squad.
Yes.
Recce, the famous Recce.
Yes.
Some critics say they had already already taken this mall. It was under their control. They had it.
Well, I don't believe it because, Jeff, 4 people holding Westgate for 4 days, somebody somewhere looting and all these things that went on, it was unprofessional. I believe there should be an inquiry, an independent inquiry into the conduct of the security failures at Westgate. And because Kenyan lives were lost, somebody must carry the burden. And that must be the heads of the security who did not do their job. There is no way in which a country can be held hostage by 4 men for 4 days with the whole army, the whole police, and so on in charge. It's impossible.
Yeah, and the cabinet secretaries as well, Tony. They were, like Barack Maluka said last night, they were conspicuously absent.
Well, I think that for me, you don't want many press conferences going on because you want the operation to operate in secret because some of the matters are sensitive. I think that there was too much demand by the public for too many press statements when we needed action in Westgate to save lives. That's where the failure was. I would not put too much emphasis on press conferences when an operation is ongoing. It should be after the operation is over that people speak and hold press conferences. It's destructive to have them during the operation.
Should Uhuru crack the whip with those guys?
The president must crack the whip because he has sworn to preserve and protect the constitution and the lives of Kenyans. Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, the president of this country, has no other greater responsibility than to safeguard the security and peace of this nation. And that is why he must act to give security and reassurance to all Kenyans.
Because at the end of the day, Tony, it's inevitable. We might get hit again.
You know, Jeff, as the sun rises every morning, Al-Shabaab here in Somalia, as long as Kenya remains, Kenya will always be a risk of being hit. And that is why we must remain always steadfast and alert at all times. And the president must be in this country to be in charge of security in order that security is taken as a top priority to preserve and protect lives and property of all Kenyans.
So what are you saying, Tony? If I could segue into the whole ICC thing. You're saying he needs to remain in the country?
Uhuru Kenyatta cannot leave Kenya. It is impossible for 3 reasons. First of all, the president of Kenya cannot attend a meeting of the African Union where 35 heads of state appear, make a resolution of which he's party to, and then snap African leaders and say, I'm not going. What kind of image will Kenya have in Africa? The African Union is our first responsibility. First, we are Africans before we are members of the world community. So Uhuru, first of all, must adhere to that. The second thing is that we have under the United Nations Security Charter number 7, the need of peace and stability all over the world. The problem in insecurity has been caused by the Middle East problems brought by America and all these people, the Jews and people fighting with the Arab states. But they have come here to Somalia, Al-Shabaab, and here Al-Qaeda here. So if the president is not here to protect us from Al-Qaeda and Shabaab, what other job will he be doing greater than that?
So what should he do, Tony? I mean, the statement will go to the United Nations Security Council.
Yes.
They're going to rule on it. If they don't rule on it before November the 12th, when the man is due to appear at the ICC, should he go?
Jeff, are you telling me about these people who ignored Nelson Mandela when he was 27 years in jail, jailed by an apartheid regime? Now they go when he's on his deathbed. Barack Obama was there. He couldn't even see Mandela. Mandela didn't even want to see him. The French president was there to see Mandela on his deathbed. Where were they when Mandela was in jail? Where were they when Jomo Kenyatta was in jail? Where were they when 1 million Rwandese people were killed in our neighboring country? Where were these people? Why are they here today? Why are they after Uhuru Kenyatta? Why are they not saying that we are after Uhuru Kenyatta because they are after regime change in Africa? And that the reason is Uhuru was possibly elected by people when they were aware the ICC was on. And so he's saying, go ahead with my trial, but let me be here to do my job. The primary of which is to preserve and protect the lives of Kenyans and the security of the region and Africa as a whole.
Should he go, Tony?
Uhuru should not leave this country. Uhuru should remain here and save Kenyans from the terror created by the West. Then the West are the ones who are making the most noise, yet they're the ones responsible for creating Al-Qaeda, where they're the ones who are responsible for creating Al-Shabaab.
They are the same ones who will issue an arrest warrant against this same man.
And in fact, that is my point. And my point precisely, who has issued an arrest warrant against George Bush for attacking Iraq? Who has attacked around warrant of arrest against Israel? Why are they after Africa? And that is why the African leaders have said to the United Nations, Africa is of age. We are tired of being the continent of colonization, of abuse, of neglect. We are saying, please treat our leaders with dignity, particularly those who are elected with a mandate. And Kenya right now is at a state of war. We are at war with the Al-Shabaab in Somalia because they attacked Kenya. And remember, Kenya has been attacked before in the bomb blast of 1998. Kenya remains a country under threat. The president's primary responsibility, first and foremost, is preserve peace and protect Kenyans.
That's why he has a deputy, Tony. Don't forget, they're not going to be at The Hague together. So if he's there, Ruto's here, Ruto's there.
There is one commander-in-chief, Jeff, in this country. There is one commander-in-chief and only one who has sworn and been sworn to be president of Kenya. And that is why he's the commander-in-chief. There are not two commanders-in-chief. And I want to also tell you this. This issue of The Hague and the propaganda of The Hague, it also annoys me. I never like talking about my community. But I want to talk today, and everybody knows the president comes from a community that was attacked. Everybody in the world has a right to protect themselves. Nobody ever says that PNU caused violence in Kenya. People say these were retaliatory attacks.
But two wrongs, Tony, two wrongs do not make a right.
Why can't the Jews protect themselves in Israel and you say that that's democracy? America goes and after Bin Laden, after he attacks 9/11, and you say that's democracy. The people that were attacked in the strongholds of the government of the day defended themselves, for which those charges were framed and fabricated. As you are aware, there are two human rights reports that were written by Omar Hassan, a member of ODM. And those reports have different issues. One of them have Raila Odinga to go to The Hague, and the other one put Uhuru Kenyatta on August 1988, when after the first report was done. So what we are simply saying, there has been no integrity in this process. The African leaders are saying that even if this process has to proceed, can it proceed with dignity? The investigations were not dignified, the trial is not dignified, and therefore the time has come for Uhuru Kenyatta to stand up and be counted. And like his father, if he must end up in a jail, like here in Kapenguria, please serve your sentence, Mr. Kenyatta, here in Kenya. But you do not go and serve your sentence at The Hague when you did nothing wrong, number one, and number two, when you're not being given due process.
Do you think, Tony, that it was, I asked Ocampo this question one time in The Hague. I remember I asked him a couple of times, and he gave me a really weird answer. I said, right crime.
Yes.
There's no doubt it was the right crime.
Yes.
But the wrong suspects.
I will agree with you, because there's an envelope of 20, Jeff. If you remember how many people were in the envelope, there were 20. How did Ocampo magically choose 6? Why can't they produce the 20 envelopes that they were given? Secondly, why is Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga not at The Hague? The Rome Statute says that people with the highest political responsibility should be at The Hague. Why were they not charged? Why did they charge Ruto and Uhuru and not Raila and Kibaki? Kibaki, in my own view, it should be the person at The Hague, and Raila Odinga. Why did they go? Uhuru was not president. Uhuru was the head of the opposition. In fact, he had not even been appointed to the cabinet during that period of time.
So you think they got the wrong people?
Of course they did. And Kibaki, I have never seen a president sitting, receiving a report from a commission, a blank envelope from Kofi Annan, a foreigner. He doesn't open it. He gives it to the man. The man gets on an aeroplane and takes it to foreigners. I mean, this is like a movie. I tell you something. One thing, Jeffrey, you must remember. Jeff, one thing you must remember. In the long history of the world, very few generations are called upon to defend themselves in the hour of maximum danger. And when you're called upon it, you don't shy. You welcome it. And I want to tell the young people of this nation, this attack on Kenya's sovereignty and integrity is a time of maximum danger. We must not shy from the responsibility. We must welcome it. And we must defend our sovereignty, our president, our constitution, and the rule of law. We cannot be intimidated. We will not be intimidated. The African Union was right to write to the UN Security Council. The UN Security Council, no, there's a state of insecurity and lack of peace in the East African region because of Al-Shabaab in Somalia, and they cannot, under Article 7 of the UN Charter, disregard that issue that has been brought to.
I said the same thing to a guest I had last week, Tony, Dr. David Matsanga, and I said he was going to The Hague because he was speaking up. He was speaking out of turn.
Yes.
He actually called me this evening. He's arrived at the ICC.
Yes.
He's going up the steps, and he's going to challenge the ICC on his own. What do you think of him and his views?
Well, before I talk about him, let me tell you this. How come there's only 8 cases in the ICC, all of which come from African countries? What happened to Syria? I thought Obama was going to bomb Syria. I thought Britain was going to bomb Syria. I thought they said that there were crimes against humanity. What happened?
They left it to the Russians.
No, because they did a deal. What did they do a deal with? They did not go to Syria. Syria is not before the UN. Neither is Iraq before the UN. What is going on today? You are talking about a situation where when it suits the West, Africa becomes the doorstep. And I told you today, whether you go back to Mandela's case today, where they show charity on his deathbed, when they come and say, Kagame, well done, but where were they when a million Rwandese died? Jeff, the question must be put to the West. Are we still colonial powers under them, or are we independent African states? And I'm not talking about one person taking on the ICC. It's not an issue about the court. You know, I was jailed by 7 judges. There are only 3 at the ICC. It's not the issue about the ICC. It's the issue of sovereignty, the issue of the rule of law. law, the issue of due process. Uhuru Kenyatta is the president of Kenya. He's no longer a private citizen. He has a job to do at home.
But he said this was a private matter, Tony. He said this himself.
He was not president then. He is now president. And that is the difference, Jeff, between sitting at the State House and staying at Caledonia, where you know Uhuru lives. There's a difference why there's an emblem, and there's a reason why he's got a presidential standard.
So as he watches you tonight, Tony, on this camera, what do you tell him? Don't go?
Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, stay put and don't go home. Tony Gachoka is here. Let them come for me.
Tony!
Jeff, let me put it to you.
All right, no. We're going to take a break now, Tony, because I need to bring Okia Omtata on the bench.
Do you get him a dictionary?
With his chains.
Will he understand how I speak? Does he have a chain? You bring him on. Let's deal with him right here on the bench.
Forget G4. As somebody called Recce Squad, Tony has been unleashed. Oh, my goodness.
I want him here.
This bench
is
on fire. Coming up, Okia Omtata. He's the man who's challenging the tyranny of numbers. He wants what he calls the safety of numbers. He wants a referendum to change the constitution on that. And we'll talk about that and other issues. Oh my, oh my. Do not even think of touching that remote control. Get those tweets coming. We're going to read all of them. And the SMSs. Keep them coming. I'm Chef Koinange. Back in a moment.